Today I'm going to be talking about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and specifically the Speckled Band, which is one of his Sherlock Holmes stories. Doyle is best known for his Sherlock Holmes stories, but he did other things too. Oddly enough, he had a bachelor, a master's, and a doctorate of medicine. Worked as a surgeon on a whaling boat. He was a medical officer on a steamer that was traveling between Liverpool and West Africa. So he did that first in his life. He was during his time as a medical student, he was deeply impressed by the skill of his professor. His name was Dr. Joseph Bell. And Dr. Joseph Bell had this innate ability to be able to observe even minute details regarding a patient's condition. And so that model, that powers of deduction, became the model for his creation of Sherlock Holmes, who made his first appearance in A Study in Scarlet, which was a novel-length story that was published in Beaton's Christmas Annual in 1887. So the success of the story was an immediate success. It encouraged Conan Doyle to write more stories involving Holmes, who would go on to appear in 4 novels and 56 short stories. So Sherlock Holmes obviously is the greatest, most famous literary detective of all time. It is also one of the most famous characters, like in general, literary characters in general. In 1893, Doyle kind of had grown to a point with his Sherlock Holmes stories that he was ready to kind of like get rid of him for a little while and turn to more kind of serious writing. And so he kills Sherlock Holmes off, hoping that would be the case. And he didn't, and the public was outraged. They were just all up in a tizzy about it. And so he would continue to write. He resurrected Holmes in an additional story and started writing about Holmes again. He also wrote a number of other novels and other various non-fictional works. He wrote a pamphlet on Britain's involvement in the Boer War, for which he was knighted, is when he became Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And he wrote histories of World War I and the Boer War. And in World War I, his son, his brother, and 2 of his nephews were killed, and so it had a very personal connection to him. He also ran twice for Parliament, which he was unsuccessful at. And he died of a heart attack on 7th of July, 1930. It's an interesting kind of like tidbit about Doyle really quickly is towards the end of his life, he became very interested in spiritualism. And they actually did a public seance after he died. So he died on the 7th of July. On July the 13th at London's Royal Albert Hall, which is like their big kind of like opera, ballet. Like it's a big place. Like it was a very public exhibition. There was a seance where the spiritualist Estelle Roberts claimed that she made contact with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. That's just kind of like a neither here nor there. You might ever come across that question in a trivia and you'll know the answer to it. Alright, so let's talk about the Speckled Band. So this story is one of the most popular of the short stories of Sherlock Holmes that was written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And oddly enough, it actually had a couple of things in it that were kind of like classic examples of like a mystery. So it's a classic example of a locked room mystery, which is when a crime is committed under seemingly impossible conditions in a room in which there are no obvious means for the criminal to enter and exit. And we kind of talked about that in my screencast on the brief history of the detective fiction genre. I talked about the 6 things that a good detective story has, and we talked about the origins of mystery and detective novels. So in our story, Edgar Allan Poe was kind of a trailblazer in this locked room mystery that we're talking about. In his story, The Murders in the Rue Morgue, which we said was the first, or sometimes called the first detective story, he was kind of pioneer this whole locked room mystery. So in the case of the Speckled Band, let's talk about the. Sorry, I'm trying to flip through where I want to start, or I want to start at my talking because I don't want to dive too. Let's stay really shallow with this one because it is a little lengthier. Okay. So this focuses on the case of Helen Stoner, who's a woman of 30 years old, and she lives with her stepfather, Sir Grimsby Roylott, at an estate called Stoke Moran. So she shows up at Holmes's house in the early morning, and she tells him her backstory. So basically, the backstory is this: once upon a time in India, Roylott married her mother. She was a young widow of a major general, and she had two daughters by him. The woman where our story is about, her name is Helen, and Julia. And so they're 2 years old when Roylott marries their mother. And so before that, Roylott was a doctor in India, and he had established a medical practice there. He was from a very wealthy family that had kind of like over the period of time had lost all of their wealth through generations of really bad decisions and that kind of thing. And so he goes to India to try to make a fortune as a doctor in the colony there. And in a fit of rage, he kills his butler. There had been some robberies at his house, and like he gets angry, maybe accuses the butler of doing it or whatever. Anyway, the butler ends up dead at the hands of Grimsby Roylott. So he already kind of had, and he goes to jail. Like he goes to jail for a period of time. And when he gets out, that's when he marries this Mrs. Stoner, this widow with the two kids. Okay, so she's really wealthy on her own right. She has a substantial bit of money, probably her family money, plus, the death of her husband, who was a major general. So she bequeaths this wealth to Roylott while she was still alive, on the condition that if something happens to her, that he will take care of the daughters when they get married and give them an annual sum to live off of. I think it's like £1,000 that she's getting a year, that her estate is making a year, which is good money. Okay, so the girl's mother dies in a railway accident, and Roylott takes the the young girls, to live with him at this manor in Stoke Moran. After the woman's death, after his wife's death, like he starts to undergo a change. Like he becomes violent, he becomes reclusive, everybody hates him. He's known to associate with wandering gypsies who he lets hang out on his plantation. He has a passion for exotic animals, like he gets shipped over from India. And at present, he has a baboon and a cheetah that live on the premises. And so they are all like, he's angry all the time. He's known all over the village. Everybody despises him. They give him a wide berth. He is supernaturally strong and angry and easy to anger. Okay? So they live this really kind of reclusive life thanks to their stepfather, and they don't have many opportunities to meet anybody. But 2 years ago, her sister Julia had met a man through a relative. I think it was the mother's sister, Honoria Westphal. So she meets a man that she wants to marry, and Dr. Roylott agrees to the marriage. And so, suspiciously, right before she is to get married, she's in Helen's bedroom, and she's telling Helen about this whistling sound that she's hearing at night. And she's like, can you whistle in your sleep, or do you ever hear a whistling at night? And Helen's like, no, I sleep so soundly, like I don't even know. So her sister's like, oh, no matter, I guess it's just maybe the gypsies outside on the plantation. And so she leaves her room and she locks herself into her room. Now, let me set the stage. So, all the rooms in the house that are livable, because the house is really kind of old and run down, it's 200 years old. There's only one wing of the house that is inhabited, and on this wing, all the doors open out into a hallway. All the windows in the bedroom open out onto the yard on the outside. The windows are barred. The rooms that open onto the hallway, the girls keep their rooms locked from the inside. They're really kind of nervous because there's a cheetah running around, a baboon running around. They lock their doors from the inside at night. So Dr. Roy Light stays in the first room. Her sister Julia is in the room in the middle, and then Helen's room is on the end. So Julia goes to bed, and Helen is awakened sometime really late at night, early in the morning, like 2 or 3 a.m. She hears a scream in the middle of the night coming from her sister's room. And so she hears a metallic clanging sound, and then she hears the shrill whistle. So she rushes out of her bedroom, rushes to her sister's aid, gets to her sister's room, opens the door, gets the door open. And her sister is like writhing in pain. She's deathly pale. She's convulsing, and she's pointing her finger like in the direction of Mr. Dr. Roy Light's room. And she tells her sister, "Oh my God, it was the band. It was the Speckled band." And then she dies. Okay? And the death baffles everybody, right? The inquest, the coroner comes in, he checks her for, there's no violence upon her body, there's no evidence of poison, the room is sound, no one could have come in from the outside because the windows are barred, no one could have come in through the chimney because there are staples that are blocking entry and exit from the chimney. Like only smoke can get up, nothing else can come down through there. The door was locked from the inside. There's just not enough evidence there, like she was completely alone when she died. So Helen believes that there's some kind of something at play here, like something has happened, but they can't prove anything. So Helen meets someone and she falls in love and she wants to get married, and her stepfather says, okay, that's fine. Let's let that happen. And mysteriously, like right before her, a few weeks, maybe it's like a month until her wedding, construction starts on the end of the house that they live in, and her bedroom wall is partially destroyed by this construction. So she has to move in to the bedroom that her sister died in, essentially. Yeah, her sister died in. So the room in the middle. And so she moves into the room, and late at night, she's awakened by the whistle and the clanging sound. She hears a whistle and a clanging sound. So she's too terrified to go back to sleep. She jumps up and goes to immediately to Sherlock Holmes in London to tell him, like, hey, I need some help. Like, I know that something is wrong here. Like, I have my suspicions that, she died of fear and terror, but what was she terrified of? And now it's happening to me too. And Sherlock Holmes is like, don't worry, my dear, we'll figure this out, And so he takes the case. Well, she leaves. They agree to come, and they agree to come to her house and kind of check out the situation. And so she leaves, and Sherlock Holmes and Watson are getting ready to follow. And right as they're getting ready to go out the door, Dr. Grimsby Roy Light shows up. Like, he shows up at their house, and he's angry, right? He's angry. He's threatening Holmes. Like, he actually picks up the fire poker, an iron fire poker, and bends it in half and is like, look what I can do, like, you need to leave well enough alone. Don't mess with stuff, which is very sus. So he leaves, he storms off. Holmes then gets the idea to go and look up the will of the deceased wife. So he wants to go find out the will of Helen and Julia's mother. which confirms his suspicions that if both sisters had married and taken their share of the allowance that they were supposed to get when they got married, that Dr. Roy Lott would not have very much money to get by on. So there's some motive there. We're going to pick back up in screencast number 2 on the Speckled Band.